Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Rosanna Mucetti, and I am the Deputy Superintendent of Educational Services here for the local school district in San Leandro Unified. And I'm really excited about talking to you today. I'm going to start with this image of Alfred and I, because there's a little bit of a history here. I don't have the same innovative background that Alfred has. I didn't work in private sector, and I didn't get to work at High Tech High. I'm sure many of you, I saw sort of your eyes pop out when you saw the High Tech High hallways that really do not look like our traditional high school, our traditional middle school, maybe some of the schools that we attended as students. And so I had the opportunity, I came up sort of through the traditional ranks of school administration. I came up through them fairly quickly, but I was a classroom teacher, I was a coach, I was an assistant principal, a principal, and then here in the East Bay, and then did a short a curriculum instruction director job in San Jose in the Silicon Valley, where I had the opportunity to kind of, see what a school district looks like and feels like in the heart of the Silicon Valley. And then after all that sort of traditional training, I had the unique opportunity of landing at the Buck Institute for Education, where BIE was sort of grappling with, we've got lots of 1% sort of top tier teachers who on their own are innovators and are interested in redefining, rethinking, or like Alfred said, renovating schooling. And they're doing that sort of despite the school system. They're not really doing that because of the school system that they sit in. And so as BIE looked to scale this redefinition of how we can do schooling, they really wanted to start thinking about how is it that we scale this in a system, and how do we renovate a system to create the conditions so that an approach like project-based learning could actually feel supportive and feel aligned to teachers' day-to-day work. And so I kind of walked into the BIE office with my traditional background and met, innovation head on. And some advice that I have for Alfred based on this photograph is that, he might be an innovator, he might be a renovator, but he needs to renovate his outfits, because this was him with me at our Teaching and Innovation Conference in August. And I have been alongside him, I don't know, probably the last 5 times, and he just has the same articles of clothing on every time. So anyway, notice me, different attire. So, Alfred's really got this theme of renovation that really resonates with me given where I sit right now. I think, that mindset is absolutely critical as we look to change education. Many of you who come from the private sector, I'm just going to be really transparent and honest, you probably wouldn't last a day in the work that we do, because there are barriers and obstacles that you can't even imagine. And often we ask things of teachers, and we put 50 obstacles in front of them that really sabotage even some of our visionary requests. I put this up there as I speak about this because this is an image from a 1950s classroom, and this is an image from a 2014 classroom. And as you can see, your private sector spaces transform at a speed that is absolutely, for us, really, really hard to wrap our minds around, because this is the last, 70 years, and things have not changed internally very much. So our pace, obviously, as the evidence shows, isn't quite the same. And so if we really want to think about renovating school systems, because we have plenty of teachers who can renovate as individuals, but if we really want to think about renovating school systems, we really have to think about how is it that we can break down some of the traditional walls that are in play in our school systems that actually don't promote teachers moving at the same pace that the private sector does, which if our teachers can't, that means our students won't, right? And so I'm here to sort of talk about how is it that we can break those walls? There's a lot of traditional walls that are put into play in school systems that really don't allow for the type of, national, sort of international work that Alfred highlighted in his 10 minutes really take root in a traditional public school system. And I think it really, really depends on individuals sitting in some of the key positions, the positions I sit in, the positions of superintendents, leaders, building leaders across school systems, to really think, what is their mindset about renovation? And are we renovation or innovation killers or promoters? Because I would argue that the design of schools, in many, many ways, is a direct sabotage to innovation and renovation. So we're working in San Leandro. I'm here to kind of tell you really quickly in the next few minutes what our efforts are around that renovation in San Leandro Unified here, right around the schools that wrap around in this local community, right around this very innovative business and workspace. And we're really trying to sort of drive ourselves to think differently, to do business differently as a school district, both internally and externally, so that we can prepare our students for a global workplace. And we're really driven because we believe that in doing this work around renovation of schools, we're really closing the opportunity gap for historically marginalized students. Many of us know that our school district, San Leandro, is very representative of California. We have a significant student population that is very culturally and linguistically diverse. The majority of our students are Latino, and we know that many of our underrepresented groups who have been historically underserved by schools are underrepresented in some of the niches of the private sector that you sit in. And we believe that by really, really transforming our school, we have an opportunity to close that opportunity gap alongside all of you. So as a district on the move, we are working to break those traditional walls. And we really are taking the mindset that we think comes from the private sector. We all know that it's all about the people, right? It's all about the people in your organization. And so, we don't have necessarily all the same conditions around the attraction and the retention of our people that you have in the private sector. And so in many ways, we have to think about how do we work with that critical mass that Al talked about, right? We have to think about how do we get to the critical mass? How do we get in the hands of our teachers this mindset that can actually align to creating the workforce that you need in your businesses? And so we're working on renovating definitions. When I was approached to give this talk here today, I was asked to talk about, why don't you talk a little bit about sort of vocational training? And so I said, okay, well, I can come and discuss vocational training. Well, let me just take the example of vocational training in schools. When we think about our own schooling history, we can all kind of think of what that career tech educational track was for kids. We can think of that hands-on, that building where they got all the fun stuff out, and kids had the opportunity of talking. Things were a little looser. They actually got to think and use their hands. It was more hands-on learning. And that was vocational education and career tech education. And now, as I engage with my teachers, I have to think of every teacher as a teacher of vocational education, right? Because we know that across the content areas, there is an opportunity now for students to really move into that sort of same application mindset that sits in career tech ed. Whether they're a history teacher, an English teacher, now the tools that we have allow them to move into that application space. And so we're working to redefine, what does that mean, vocational education? We have to break the wall of that traditional definition and renovate it. We're working with teachers, and this is absolutely critical, I think, for the private sector to understand, is that as we move to approaches like project-based learning, we have to encourage our teachers. Most of us that attended school, we knew we had to learn the War of 1812, right? And it was about the content, and you never really used it again. It was never about the process. And schools have been built upon content mastery, not about the process and how. And we know in the world of work, it's all about the how. It's all about the how. So how do we, run our school system in a way where teachers can start to value that, and they feel that us as a system and parents in the community also value that? not just that their kid knows all the facts around the War of 1812. So we need to think about those parallel tracks. So something we've done as a school district is we're elevating, don't just know your content. We're actually starting to talk to teachers around what's our teaching approach and what's our assessment for kids' digital literacy. Because it's absolutely unacceptable that I go to an 11th grade classroom and that a 11th grader doesn't know how to save a document. That's not okay, right? They're not going to survive in the world of work. How do we ensure that they need to know about that War of 1812, or they need to understand the Pythagorean theorem, but they also need to be equally as effective in communication and collaboration, if not possibly more important. We're also working with our teachers to really think about how do you bring critical thinking and problem solving into the classroom. And those of you who've kind of been observing the education paradigm over the last 15 years, you know that it's all been about A, B, C, or D. Pick the right answer. Right? And there has not been spaces in school systems to really promote this idea of critically thinking and why. And maybe getting the wrong answer is okay. And that's actually a way to deepen your knowledge and take those deep dives into content. We're also really trying to bring back, because some folks will say, oh, before No Child Left Behind, there was creativity and innovation in schools. And the last 15 years really killed that. So we're really trying to work with our teachers to demonstrate that we value creativity and innovation in the classroom. And so it's a lot of work sort of redefining that paradigm and that mindset, because so much of the opposite has been pounded into our educators. So for folks like me, as a deputy superintendent, I really perceive my role and the role of my fellow colleagues to help create the conditions for teachers and students across classrooms and buildings in our school system so that this can take root. I'm going to move quickly. So we're renovating the toolbox. How are we renovating the toolbox? In San Leandro, we've chosen some key initiatives that we think are going to give teachers the permission to start moving in this direction. And simultaneously, how much time do I have? About 0. We're also thinking about not only renovating the toolbox and with an approach like project-based learning, but also how can we renovate structures? You have to wonder if the design of schools in terms of the instructional day are really optimal for these things to take root. And so we're in a phase of exploration, in a phase of dialogue, where we're collaborating with our teachers to be able to do this. But I'm just going to skip a bunch of slides because I have a school district whose needs are always on my mind. So I have to tell you, look at all I didn't talk about. I have to tell you that I have a need, and when I have this many private sector in front of me, I'm always going to ask for something. So, we have an initiative. One of the ways that we did this, and I'm just going to take 60 seconds. One of the ways that we did this was that, bringing this prototyping idea to the school district to kind of start defying that old paradigm, instead of forcing some of this vision down the pipeline and telling teachers you must and you will, right? This sort of compliance-oriented mindset to a mindset of commitment and innovation and renovation. We decided to ask some teachers and invite them to participate, and that they would have some voice and choice in this. And we actually were going to erect 25 demonstration classrooms across the district to kind of model some of this a year ahead so that other teachers could start to see, what does that feel like? What does that look like? And I just want to say that when we put the request out to our teachers, I was told that I was going to have a hard time rallying 25. And we actually got 140 teachers applying, which is over a quarter of our workforce, our teacher workforce here in San Leandro. And so I had to go back and ask for more funding, and so we didn't erect 25, but we've been working closely with 75. I have 2 of them in the audience. One is Tony Farley, and one is Anita Waldron, who is our vice president of our teachers bargaining unit. And so those 75 teachers have been working closely with us, and they have been dabbling in all of this, and we've been in a reciprocal relationship with them. How's this working with students. We've been dealing with the resistance. How do we restructure things in order to wrap our arms around the resistance and take things to scale? And I don't think school districts typically do that. I think they usually just, force their will. And we're really trying to think alongside teachers. And so, this is our little innovation incubator in San Leandro. So what do I need from you? This is what I need from you. Our teachers many of them are implementing their first project. They got trained by the Buck Institute for Education. And many of them are looking to break those walls of the traditional classroom, connect the community to their kids in the spirit of real world learning, and have folks from the private sector come in and give feedback, not only on their content and how they demonstrate that learning through their project and the products they create in their project, but also how did they do sort of in that collaboration mode? How did they do in terms of communicating the vision behind their products? And they would love feedback from you. Why from you? Because, often teachers, we become like parents in the classroom, and we can say it 75 times, but if someone from the real world comes out to give them that feedback, it ups the ante in ways that you can't even imagine, and will deepen and create such a powerful experience for our kids. So with that, if you're interested in supporting with that, there's my email. Okay? Thank you.